Excellencies, distinguished guest participants, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our second day of webinar will begin shortly. Once again, there are several rules which you need to follow during the conference. First, please keep your microphone off and turn on your camera. Second, please behave and dress appropriately during webinar. Third, please do not use the chat room as your personal water cooler. Fourth, link of attendance and certificate will be given anytime during webinar. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you. Excellency, the Dean of Faculty of Sports Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Excellency, Vice Deans and Head of Departments in Faculty of Sports Science. Excellencies, invited speakers, distinguished guests, and participants. Thank you very much for your coming on second day of the 5th International Conference on Sports, Health, and Physical Education 2021. Today, we will hold a discussion in the first plenary session, which will be led by our moderator, who is expert on epidemiology and biostatistics. He is also active in Indonesia Public Health Association. Without further ado, for Assistant Professor Lukman Fauzi, SKM MPH, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Billy Chastiana, for the opportunity given. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ramadan Kareem to all ladies and gentlemen. Well, it is such an honor for me to guide remarkable plenary session in the second term organized by Faculty of Sports Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia, in collaboration with ASEAN Council, Physical Education and Sport ACPES. I am Lukman Fauzi from Public Health Department, Universitas Negeri Semarang, and I will be serving as your moderator today. Before we get started, let me to read the rule for participant as follow. Number 1, please turn on your camera and turn off your microphone while the second plenary session. And number 2, please behave appropriately during the webinar. And you are willing to ask the question by writing in the chat menu. And number 4, in the end of the webinar, it will be informed the link of attendance form of this seminar for issuing the SE certificate. So stay tuned on Zoom and YouTube. And the last, the link is open for only 60 minutes after all the plenary session is over. Ladies and gentlemen, in this second plenary session agenda, we have 2 speakers who will deliver speech about the aspects of physical education and health amid this pandemic situation. The topic of physical education will be delivered by Professor Philip Ward, PhD from the Ohio State University, United States of America. And the second topic of health will be delivered by Associate Professor Dr. Mahlul Azam, MD, MPH from Faculty of Sports Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. Among us, the Excellency Professor Philip will deliver a speech about the future direction of physical education and physical education teacher education. Professor Philip is the director of Master of Sports Coaching degree, and he is also director of Learning to Teach Physical Education Research Program at the Ohio State University, United States of America. He was graduated from the Doctor of Philosophy, the Ohio State University, USA, in Applied Behavior Analysis in 1993. And we are happy for having him because his expertise is on physical education teacher education, ethics in coaching, and coaching effectiveness will increase our insight. He also wrote 7 books in the topic of physical education. He and the team also helped the government to publish policy document on student recruitment for physical education and health education teacher education programs. Amazingly, he has up to 131 publications in peer-reviewed journal. He also became editorial board or reviewer in several journals like CAS, International Journal of Sport and Health, Journal of Teaching in Physical Education, and so on. In this plenary session, in the second plenary session, after all speakers deliver the topic for each 30 minutes, I will open the question and answer session for the audience here. So you are willing to write the question in the chat menu. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our first invited speaker, Professor Philip Ward, PhD. The screen is yours.
Okay. Good morning. I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunity to present to you all, and I thank the organizing committee for the opportunity to do so. My talk tonight is about, or this morning I should say, is about the future directions of physical education and teacher education. It's really about policy, and I'm going to come back to that point as I move through the evening, the lecture. Just a quick things, this is where I'm from in Ohio, and basically in the center of Ohio, which is sort of in the center of the USA. This is a quick picture of my university. It's one of the largest universities in the United States. I think the student body is now around about 60,000 students with another 40,000 faculty and support services. And you can't really talk about Ohio State without talking about Ohio State football. So just a quick picture of some of our players here. I want to begin my talk with the question of how best to serve children and youth in physical education. And around the world, there are just a whole lot of rationales about what we should be doing. And when you look at the empirical support for some of the things that are being suggested, it isn't anywhere near as strong as we should be using to inform policy and practice in schools. And my main argument tonight is that the best investment a school district, a country, a state can make is to improve the quality of the teacher, and in particular, the instructional skills and knowledge of the teacher. It's simply the best way to improve student learning in schools, and not just in physical education and health, but in any subject area. It's much greater than, for example, the addition of technology. It's much greater than the addition of facilities. A good teacher is worth gold. And that's essentially what I want to talk about tonight, about what we know about helping to improve teachers. So there are only 3 ways to improve learning at scale. And by at scale, I mean large scale improvement, not just in a single class, but what do you do as a country, as a local region to improve learning? The first one is to increase the knowledge and level that the skills that the teacher brings to the instructional process. This means training them in basically what works, evidence-based practice, but also developing their skills and repertoires at being able to adapt and improve instruction, and essentially increasing their knowledge of who they're teaching, who their students are. I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit. A second way of improving learning at scale is to improve the content knowledge of the teacher and to create deeper understanding by the teacher in terms of the unpacking of content. And with this dimension, I think that I want to suggest we think we know a lot about this, and I think we do, but not what everyone, it's not what everybody thinks they know about this area. We're actually weakest in this area of all the areas that we could look at improving teachers. Yet most of us, I think, assume that we're actually pretty good at this. The third way is to change the role of the student in the instructional process. So if you look at the pictures I've got below, you've got students engaging with their minds as well as with their bodies. They're making good decisions, they're cooperating, they're being good good citizens in the school, and they're using their knowledge to improve their performance. That changing of the roles from students just doing to being really true collaborators in their own learning is an important outcome if we want students to learn. These three ways, improving the student's relationship, the knowledge of the teacher, and improving content knowledge, these things result in really big improvements in student learning when we use them. And so when I look at a teacher, I look at a teacher as a decision maker. And the term I'm going to use tonight about making decisions is pedagogical content knowledge. And pedagogical content knowledge consists of really a large number of knowledge bases, but the five most common ones are content, what you know about what you're going to teach, what you know about the student, what you know about the context, such as is it indoors or outdoor, how much equipment do you have, size of the class, frequency of instruction, what you know about curriculum, and what you know about pedagogy. Tonight, my focus is going to be exclusively on content, but I can't talk about content without talking about the other influences here because, well, they're highly related. So let me move into the body of what I want to talk about. Content knowledge in nearly every subject area is typically seen as consisting of two components, a component called common content knowledge, which is the knowledge you need to perform. If it were math, it would be the knowledge you need to perform long division. If it's physical education, it would be the knowledge you need to perform the underhand clear in badminton. Specialized content knowledge is knowledge you need to know to teach that content. And it consists of a number of domains, which I'm going to talk about now. Common content knowledge has two really big domains. It's knowledge of etiquette, safety, and rules, and knowledge of technique and tactics. Not every sport like gymnastics uses tactics, or swimming if you're teaching beginners, but where relevant, tactics is appropriate. Specialized content knowledge, or SCK, involves three things at the very least. It involves knowledge of the instructional tasks that you're going to use to teach children whatever it is you're teaching them. Dance, yoga, badminton, soccer, whatever that is. How you represent that content to the students. You do that using demonstrations, the instructions you give them, and it also involves knowledge of the errors that children make, not just the errors of technique or tactics, but the errors perhaps in rotating around in a keep away game from offense to defense. These two domains, CCK and SCK, and their subdomains in physical education, represent core aspects of content knowledge. And when they're dealt with individually and teacher acquires knowledge in this, we get really astounding results. Just to give an example of what I'm talking about here and the relationship between these three forms of knowledge, if we were looking at a sit-up, then this left-hand column would represent the knowledge a teacher needs or a student needs as well to perform a sit-up. Specialized content knowledge would consist of all of the instructional progressions that a teacher knows. And pedagogical content knowledge is the selection of these instructional tasks to help these students learn. These are beginners, and so these activities might suit well for them, but this is an athlete and she needs more particular, more advanced skills. Now, the problem is that if the teacher only knows 2 or 3 of the specialized content knowledge tasks, she really can't help her students anywhere near as a teacher if he knows all of these instructional tasks or more. So building up specialized content knowledge is important. Knowing what the technique is to do the sit-up is important, and applying it to particular groups of students, adapting the task to the students, is pedagogical content knowledge. This is a similar example here in a keep away game in basketball, where the defense basically the defense walks without interceptions, and they can then run to block passes, and then they can run and intercept. And you can see that these tasks are adapted to the developmental level of the children in terms of their ability to perform the skill. So what do we know about improving this knowledge for teachers? So the first thing is that, as I said, I'm going to filter everything through this thing called content knowledge. But if I were talking about students, and specifically my talk was about students, then students would be where content is, and the content would be where students are. So if you, I know you all know this, but if you give a test of 100 to 100 people, you get a pretty much a bell curve, a normal curve. And I want to suggest that this is a terrible outcome for instruction. If a teacher is really doing this poorly, we really need to be helping them. I'd like to suggest that in physical education, a lot of the outcomes we are looking for, that we get when we look, are on the left, on this side of the curve. In other words, we're not doing very well in terms of instruction for all students. We do very well for some students, but those students are usually pretty accomplished. What we want are outcomes that look like this. This is the red curve is 1 standard deviation improvement. The green curve is 2 standard deviations. That's not what's important. What is important is that the children at the lower ends of these curves are near the average of where they would be on a normal distribution. And the differences between the high and the low students is much less. That is a good instructional outcome. And we routinely produce that in a couple of areas in physical education in our research. So it is a truism. You cannot teach what you do not know. And what's important about this is the question, what do teachers actually know? And so I'm going to present data that is a summary set of 16,000 pre-service and in-service teachers around the world in a number of countries. These are the countries where the data has been collected. It pretty much looks the same regardless of the educational system. So China has a sort of national system. Everyone follows the same curriculum and pretty much at the same time of year doing the same sorts of things with a little bit of teacher variation. And the US is a free-for-all. We do everything all the time and no one does it the same way. And the results we get are pretty much the same. Regardless of the country, a little bit different in one area in China, in one aspect, but more similar than different. So here are 5 assumptions, I'll let you read them, about improving teachers relative to CCK and SCK. And as a little bit of a heads up, every one of them is seriously wrong. It's not true. Now, this has big implications for how we spend our time in teacher education and how governments arrange the policy for training teachers. And I'd like to suggest that this is not just a physical education finding. In the United States, we're finding similar things in math and science and reading, elementary reading. It's a very common event. So let's look at the data of these 16,000 folks. And the assumption is that teachers have good CCK as a result of participating in their K-12 physical education extracurricular activities. And basically, what did they learn before they entered the university? And the answer is not much. Typically, if we assess students on the things they know best, so perhaps badminton or soccer or dance, there we get an average score of about 60%. This represents the impact of what children have and young adults have learned prior to entering the university. And we know they don't learn that much. If this were a letter grade in America, I'm pretty sure it would be similar in Indonesia. This would be a failing grade entering the university. In other words, the assumption that our pre-service teachers have learned content knowledge from being in physical education and can use that content knowledge, and we don't need to teach it too much in the university, that is not a good assumption. And because most of the university content classes around the world are spent playing or performing the sport, not really knowing the sport. Assumption two, they have good common content knowledge when they leave the university. And this is absolutely not true. Here, they enter the university with about 60% of the knowledge. They leave with about 80% on a good day. It's usually not that. It's usually a bit lower. The teacher education programs do not do anywhere near as good a job as they might think that they do. This is specifically referring to common content knowledge of techniques and tactics, how to perform skills, not how to teach them, just the basic knowledges. And you wouldn't want a doctor working on you in surgery if they only knew 80% of the knowledge. And the knowledge we're talking about is not everything you would need to know about badminton. It's just the knowledge you need to know to teach badminton to middle school and high school children. So bottom line, future teachers just don't know enough CCK. So if we look at SCK, we find a similar outcome. We find that most students in most activities we assess, and we've assessed volleyball, badminton, soccer, dance, basketball, bunch of activities like that, are about have less than 15% of what we want them to know in terms of instructional skills. But frankly, we wouldn't have expected them to know much. It's not a student's job to know when they're in K-12 physical education how to teach anything. They get to perform and they get to learn. But the point I'm making is a teacher who uses good progressions to teach someone a skill, that stuff just doesn't transfer to students. So we have this problem that we need to do a better job of SCK, and this places a burden on teacher education to do a better job. How well do students in physical education programs around the world do in SCK? And the answer is not well. They enter pretty low, as I said, and they pretty much exit pretty low. This is a significant problem because you cannot get that curve I showed about earlier, going from the orange to the red and the blue curves, if you don't know what you're teaching. And we find this in almost, we find this in almost every country we look at. And the only difference we found is in China, where their CCK is a little bit higher, but their SCK is as bad as the rest of the world. And America is like really bad at this. Sorry, I'm just catching up with my slides. Okay, which brings us to the question, well, perhaps teachers get better at acquiring SCK with more experience. And this is a study that, well, it's not true. This is a study that was done in China. We did it with 384 soccer teachers. Now, what's important about China is that the average teacher has at least, if soccer is their major, they have at least 3, sometimes as many as 5 specific classes in learning soccer in the university. And when they go out, they teach soccer pretty much across the year with almost every day, if not 4 days a week of physical education. So this represents a system where if you were going to learn from experience, you would pretty much learn. Well, it turns out that our benchmark, our criterion of 3.0, which represents a teacher who teaches incrementally and progressively. So if I was teaching in volleyball and I was teaching someone a forearm pass, I might have several progressions for them to do and lead them to connect to other skills and then finally get to the game. However, we find that most teachers around the world, it doesn't matter the country, do not teach incrementally. They might do 1 or 2 skills, then put them together and then finish very quickly in the game. We do not lead children and young adults towards learning in an incremental and progressive way. And moreover, as this is a curvy linear relationship, at the end of their careers, when you expect teachers who knew the most to be doing, because of their career, they're actually doing about the same, a little bit better than they were when they first entered the field in their first 5 years. And this represents simply the experience of the teachers and a rank of the teachers. So I want to return to my notion of how best to serve children and youth. And my main argument is that teachers matter. We need to significantly invest in the quality of our teachers, much more than we're doing. We cannot assume that, that 2 or 3 or 4 years of teacher training will do the job when teachers are teaching for 30 years across their lifetime. We need to engage better professional development, and that professional development should be very specifically focused, at least in one area, and that is in content knowledge. I'm going to suggest there are lots of other areas that teachers should be focused on. So what should we do? Teacher education must improve the teaching of common content knowledge. But here's the thing, this is so easy to do, we shouldn't even be talking about it. You could improve the common content knowledge in any sport or activity with online work. They learn it, they get tested on it. It's the easiest of all things to do, but the best we can achieve right now in the countries we've looked at, and this is about 7 or 8 countries, is 80% on a good day, and often much less. We need to do a significantly better job of specialized content knowledge, of teaching. Almost every university in the world in a content class has students perform the content, but they spend very little time talking about how they would represent the underhand clear in badminton to students, what instructional progressions they might use to help students learn to do that. And the big one is knowing which errors students are making so they can best help them. We do, in every country, a terrible job. No one is good at it. And this needs to fundamentally change because, as I said at the beginning, the majority of our outcomes are below the 50th percentile for student learning. And we want to move them on the other side of the curve. You don't get CCK or SCK through performance. I think we've got probably close to 20,000 data sets on this now. Performance is often very unrelated, and if it's correlated, it's very low to SCK and CCK knowledge. I might also tell you that SCK is unrelated to CCK. So if you're really good at knowing the technique and tactics, it does not mean you're good at teaching, the instructional progressions to teach. As I said, CCK can be taught fairly easily. SCK must be taught, and it takes real effort to do that, but it's a classroom focus, not a court or field focus. Our pre-service teachers need to know the instructional progressions. They certainly need practice in teaching them, but they need to know them and they need to be able to discriminate errors. And teachers this must be done specifically. It's not something that is generalizable. If I teach you badminton, it just isn't true. And I know many people will disagree with me. It isn't true that I've taught you tennis or table tennis or pickleball. Badminton, the grip, the techniques in badminton are unrelated to performance in tennis. And so if you want to improve somebody, a teacher teaching badminton, you need to teach them badminton. If you want them to improve in tennis, you need to teach them tennis and soccer and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Phillips, for the informative and interesting presentation, but please be willing to wait a moment. After second session, we are going to the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the second topic in this plenary session. I will share the curriculum vitae first. The Excellency Professor Azam will deliver a speech about the COVID-19 global challenges and public health response. Professor Azam is the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs of Faculty of Sports Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. He earned the doctoral degrees from the doctoral program in Medicine and Health Sciences, Diponegoro University, Indonesia. His expertise in public health and epidemiology. He published more than 30 publications and in peer-reviewed journal articles. Until now, he is also organizing committee in Health and Sport Science Division, National Sport Committee, Central Java Province, and also he is organizing committee in Continuing Medical Education, Indonesia Medical Doctoral Association Semarang City. Professor Azam also became editorial board or reviewer in several journals like BMJ Open, Sport Science for Health, and Malaysian Journal of Public Health Medicine. And now I would like to welcome our second invited speaker, Professor Mahalul Azam. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lukman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to become one of the invited speaker in the 5th ISMINA 2021. It is really an honor for us to be here. Nice talk from Professor Philip about the future physical education teacher. Thank you, Professor Philip. And we now will deliver a topic of COVID-19 global challenge and public health response. Please let me share my screen. Okay, is it okay? My screen.
It works, sir.
Thank you. Okay, we know that on January 30, 2020, WHO declared the SARS-CoV-2 outbreak as public health emergency of international concern. This decision is to prevent the spread of viruses and strengthen countries' preparation for active surveillance, and then isolation and case management, contact tracing, as well as the mitigation of COVID-19. This figure describes the situation of COVID-19 globally. The total case number is around 147 million based on the data I accessed in 27 April. And if the total population of this world is around 7.8 billion, the incident rates of the cases of COVID-19, the crude incident rate is around 19 per 1,000 population. And how about the case fatality rate of COVID-19? The case fatality rate is around 2.11. It occurred 3.1 million deaths from the total cases and found as 2.11 case fatality rate of this disease. And we now administer the vaccination. The total number of dose vaccination is around 961 million. It means that if we compare with the population, the vaccination administration dosage is 122 per a million population. But we know that the vaccination is divided into several types. This is on the completed dosage. There is a single dose, or the other is a double dose for completed doses of administration of the vaccine. So this number is not described clearly. And how in Indonesia? In Indonesia, the cases based on the date of 27 April, the total cases of COVID-19 is around 1.6 million. Of the total population, Indonesia is to 170 million. It means the incident rates, accrued incident rate per 1,000 population is 6 cases. Of course, then conducted in our system, and the test in Indonesia is around 14 million. This is based on specimen data. Based on the person data is 9.6 million tests in Indonesian population. It means that the test for 1,000 population is around 4 tests for a million population. And the case positivity rate of the test is around 17%. It means that 17 found the case in 100. And case fatality rate in Indonesia is 2.72%. It means that higher the global in case fatality rate. Vaccination coverage in Indonesia, total doses administered is around 17 million doses, and we know that in Indonesia, mostly give Sinovac that delivered that administered a second twice dosage administration to be completed status of vaccination. In this number for the person is around 32 per million population. And hope that this vaccination reach the herd immunity. It means that immunity reach the pandemic will be over. And on previous reference, the measles and the polio reach 80% to reach the herd immunity. And regarding the COVID-19, we don't know until how much because this is unknown disease, this is new disease, yeah, and some science give the 7% immunity will this pandemic over. This is the detailed administered in the first administration around 12 million, but in the second vaccination on complete dosage is around 7 million. This is our neighbor situation in Australia. In Australia, total cases around 29 million on the total population of 25 million. It's mean incident rate, per a million population is around 1 per a million. And they conduct the test. They conducted the test around 16 million tests. It means that more than a half population being tested by 19 tests, PCR or antigen rapid swab. And the case fatality rate in the Australia higher than Indonesia at 3.06%. And we must consider this condition also adjusted by the tests conducted. Yeah, we know if there is a case fatality or the death because of COVID-19 and it's not being diagnosed, this will decrease the number of case fatality rate. How about the vaccine in Australia? 75 per million population. And this is the condition in Singapore, our neighbor also. The total case of number of cases is around 61 million cases, and the total population is around 6 million. So the incident rate in Singapore is 10 per million. That is higher than in Indonesia and in Australia as well. And it's also, of course, depend on the tests conducted. They conduct tests for every citizen, even more than 1.6, yeah, more than once, yeah, almost twice. Every citizen in Singapore being tested by COVID-19 diagnostic test. And it's related to the condition of case fatality rate. Yeah, this case fatality rate in Singapore is very low. There is 0.05 per 100 cases. And the vaccination is almost going cover almost half of the population. That is 376 per 1,000 population. This is India, the trending topic for COVID-19, then of second wave cases surge. India have 1.3, yeah, around 1.4 billion population and have cases around 18 million. It means the incident rate is 13%. It can be adjusted by the total population test. The total population test is around 200 per million. And the case fatality rate is 1.12. The total vaccination is around 94 per million. But we didn't know how many doses administered in India use. We go to the need analysis of the COVID-19. What is the direct effect of COVID-19 pandemic in health effect? Of course, we discussed about the case fatality rate globally. Yeah, like I said before, it's around 3%. And we must concern and we must alert that the rising, the case fatality rate is rising with the age, and approximately 15% of the case fatality rate of patient with 80 years old. Other comorbidity like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory diseases, hypertension, immunocompromised person, and healthcare worker have higher risk of the case fatality rate since the exposure of them. And effect on health system regarding the preparedness of the health system, hospital, public health center, surveillance system, etc. And the readiness in patient rate also must be concerned regarding the hospital bed, ventilator, or the supporting facilities include personal protective equipment. And what is the public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic? The public health response of the most important goal of the COVID-19 are to slow down the transmission and protect the health system. And of course, by the slowing down the transmission, we hope we stop the transmission. The most important, how to diagnose, to isolate, and cure and care all of COVID-19 cases include mild and moderate cases. Here in Indonesia, maybe we just know concern in the serious and severe cases. We must conduct tracing, testing, and treatment. Who should be traced? Yeah, who should be traced is close contact with confirmed cases. family, and her friend, colleague, etc. And who should be tested? Close contact must be tested, and then screening tests post, and then suspect cases, also as well as subject with the symptom and sign of COVID-19. It means that all of respiratory infection sign and symptom like a cough, fever, myalgia, and other common cold symptom must be tested for COVID-19 diagnostic test. And who should be treated, like I said before, that of mild, moderate, and severe cases must be treated appropriately. The public health response objective is to limit the spread between individual and its population, and then ensuring prompt and appropriate clinical care to reduce severity and mortality, and identify critical knowledge and the gap, develop the new method to prevent spread, wear a mask, yeah, and then frequent hand washing, physical distancing, and avoid the crowd. What is the key means of public health response? The first is surveillance. We must conduct directly detect and isolate the suspects to limit the transmission. And then we must also pinpoint of entry screen, detect case on arrival, as well as in the airport, in the harbor, in the some of mode of transmission terminal. And then provision of information to people from affected areas. The most, the important thing is contact tracing, monitoring of close contact, and then continued by self-isolation, for 2 weeks. And then social distancing activities, limiting mass gathering, etc. Public communication and health education must also regularly communicate on case number and years. Another aspect of the key measures of the public health response, the healthcare facilities. Medical management must be conducted appropriately of the trials and prevention and treatment in prevention and the control. The laboratory aspect must be also considered as a key measures, reference lab and decentralized testing capacity. You can imagine in the beginning of the pandemic in Asia here, just two center, just two laboratory that have capability to test the COVID-19 diagnosis by PCR in Eijkman, Jakarta, and the laboratory in Airlangga University. In the beginning, we can imagine almost 100 million population just have two laboratory. And we are happy every public health center can conduct diagnostic tests with the anti-rapid test. The guideline must be also developed and regular update medical and for medical public health professional as well as in for the general public. Research and science must be also developed to respond to develop the tool, the instrument, the management of, and also to the vaccine and treatment. Logistic also must be fulfill the need for medical as well as non-medical suppliers. Global challenge issue in COVID-19 pandemic. We know that we have complicated pandemic here because the mixture of high costly social distancing, economic aspect, and containment as well, and we also limited knowledge regarding efficacy of vaccine now because it is developed under research, and we also facing the reinfection case It can be related to the immunity status after efforts. Yeah, we can found the more further read here in this reference. And regarding the reinfection cases, we also conduct systematic review, and it's possible related to the immunity status recovered. We also now facing the new variant of virus. Since of the mutation of the virus is very easily to mutation. And yes, of course, we also anticipate the second wave case of COVID-19. This is the graph that described in India station on September. They have peak cases and downgrade here, down trend here. And in January, it's very lowest cases in India. And now they get the second wave, and the cases here is extremely high, yeah, more twice in the peak in January. This is the confirmed case in India, and as well as the of these cases is also similarly. This is the situation in Indonesia. We get the peak highest cases in January, and now we can happy because the trend is down and it's steady. But like I said before, that we must notice about the second wave of these cases. Lesson learned from India, the possible cause of uncontrolled second wave COVID-19 is related to the, we can say, premature euphoria or masking effect of epidemiology data, like we saw in the graph. Content of the graph make people ignoring the preventive measures and no alertness to the second wave. And then the second aspect, we also related the low vaccination rate. We know that actually can produce the vaccine, but they export the vaccine to another countries. Yeah, I think it must be, we must learn about this condition. The second masking effect is related to the vaccine itself. Masking effect of vaccine, I think all of people, or mostly people, feel be fully protected after being vaccinated, and its impact in loosen or ignore of preventive measures. We also notice the new mutant variant of COVID-19 in India. There is a kind of B1617 origin in India, and the UK new mutant is B117. And then relaxing in mass scheduling regarding the public policy in for government, and as well in people itself, to doing a social ceremony, religion ceremony. You know, recent we will facing Idul Fitri. This must be also noticed as the threat of a second wave. And in India, they also election rallies and its campaign also contribute to the wave. Yeah, actually, there is multifactorial must be not to prevent the second wave of COVID-19. This is the related of reinfection, maybe more burden of this disease, because maybe there is no 100 immune after the infection. About the vaccine developed regarding the COVID-19, it's different because this pandemic is too fast spread and fast transmission. Normally, the step is in preclinical and clinical. Every step around 30 months. And how about the COVID-19 vaccine? Skip the preclinical stage and then free phase in the first phase around 6 months, yeah, compared to the normal or the regular vaccination. Regular vaccine is around 30 months, and as well as until the third phase. Third phase in the COVID-19 also skip and getting approval for the emergency use. This is why we don't know much about the vaccine efficacy and effectiveness. And then adapting response measure to the context of epidemic, we adopt from the WHO that there is three factors to help us make several choice. The aspect consists of location, proximity, and time. Yeah, we know that open air is safer than enclosed spaces, and then farther away from other is safer than close together, and shorter time period with other are safer than more time. In Indonesia, we call VDC, ventilasi, durasi, dan jarak. And then what to do if someone is sick in a household? We isolate the sick person, prepare a separate room, yeah, or isolate the space and keep distance from with the virus. Identifying the one household member to be contact person, which is not a high risk and has the previous contact with outside, and always wear a medical mask if contact with this person, and use spirit, disease cup and eating disease, and then always clean and disinfect frequently surfaces. We must take care of the sick person, monitor the sick person symptom and sign regularly, pay attention and ensure the sick person not dehydration. And the most important thing, also call the healthcare if there is immediately danger sign for difficulty of breathing, confusion, low speech or mobility, and chest pain. How about the feeding family in a long-term care facility? Maybe in Indonesian, this is not common because elderly always live with their kin, yeah, but of Indonesian also live in the care facility, or yes, this the family in the care facility. We must concern about if unwell, cancel the visit and then check in advance, contact the provider there, make an appointment, obey the regulation, etc. And then stay safe during your visit. Yeah, I think if we visit to other, we often forget to wearing mask, yeah, and then not conduct the health protocol appropriately, like physical distancing, hand washing, and the surface cleaning. Explain everything, information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, and then stay in touch by make a call, make a voice call, etc. Then this is the shopping groceries precaution. Reduce your waste by avoid the peak hours, and then before we go, we must always check regulation, local regulation, bring hand sanitizer and wear our mask, and in high afforded, we must use a medical. Limit the time by shopping and make a list before, and then keep at least 1 meter distance, yeah, to physical distancing guarantee. And we must also consider that don't put off necessary medical appointment. Yeah,
Mr.
I
Azam,
think in
pardon me.
our community we also, yes.
2 minutes
Okay.
remaining.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, in our community, most of people avoid to come to the medical facilities, hospital, etc. I think it's not appropriate. We conduct this step. Firstly, reduce our risk by check the facility. Can we make telemedicine or distant consultation, etc. And we must conduct the health protocol as well in the physical distancing using masks and etc. And then how to prepare in case someone gets sick in our home. Yeah, get your contacts ready, make a list for contact in health facility, etc. And for you support our family, friend, etc. And then what should be prepared is to guarantee the stock up of supply in medicine, prepare the spirit room, and put in place a network to spot exchange. And then if you have been diagnosed with COVID-19, we must or you must stay in a spirit room and avoid others and always open windows frequently. Yeah, I think together we can fight the coronavirus. Virus protection is in our hand. And I think that's all of my presentation. I acknowledge the organizing committee, also to Mr. Evan Nugroho to prepare the presentation together. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
I appreciate for your interesting topic related with the COVID-19 pandemic. Very well, ladies and gentlemen. Now we come to question and answer session. I recap 5 questions for Professor Philip and 2 questions for Professor Azam. In the first turn, the questions to Professor Philip. The question from Ayu. I will send the question one by one to Professor. Ayu asked about you said that the teacher must know what he teach. For PE class, does it mean that PE teachers must master all games and sport when they are teaching? Professor?
Yes, I think the answer is no. There are every country I've been to has particular ways of looking at this, and I think many of them are really, really good we should use. So for example, in China, a typical teacher is an expert in 1 or 2 content areas, and that's what they teach. They have a limited range of teaching other skills. They can get good at teaching those few skills. If you look at the expertise literature, there is simply no way that a teacher can teach all of. I don't know. I believe there are 8 to 10 activities that are taught in the Indonesian curriculum, but in America there are more than 15 at every grade level, and there is simply no way an American teacher could ever become really good at teaching all of that content. So you know, you need to, I guess I would say teaching less, teaching it longer for longer duration units is better than teaching a lot in a short period of time. And that time that you spend on one or that one content area for a longer period of time will allow you to understand how students learn in that content and for you to spend more time helping them become competent, I should say.
Okay, thank you. The next question is in line with the previous question. How far, the question from Mrs. Ruri, I think, how far the PE teachers can play and know about the content?
Performance, yeah, look, I get beat up a lot in answering this question, but I believe a physical education teacher must be able to demonstrate that which they're teaching. But we have taken that to an extreme in our preparation of teachers. Much more important is their ability to know the technique and tactics and safety and etiquette. And even more important than that, or adding on to that perhaps, is their understanding of how to teach the content. And I don't mean pedagogy, I mean those instructional progressions. That's the number one outcome that teachers need. And even then, we can't do it. This is not a Harry Potter environment where we can wave a magic wand and help teachers become this competent. I think the number one skill that teachers need is their ability to experiment, to shape, to tinker. All of those words mean to look at what you've got and to try experimenting, changing what the students are doing, changing the different progressions you're teaching. That's a very important teaching outcome that we pay virtually no attention to. We really lock teachers into lesson plans, and lesson plans may not be the best way to teach.
Thank you, Professor. And the next question is from Mr. Kurniawan. He asks about the online learning. The question is, what is the most important thing to be prepared as an educators, especially as a PE teachers, to apply all of their skills and knowledge in providing online physical education learning? Like now we have a pandemic COVID-19.
Right. Part of me wants to say become an art teacher, because it's a lot easier to teach art online than it is to teach physical education online. It's difficult. I don't know if I've got a lot of good ideas, but for the online environment, I don't think the solution is to make this a classroom-based subject. Children need physical activity. So, maybe the single best outcome we could work on would be to do fitness activities, basic skill activities with balloons and things that can be done. But the fact of the matter is the technology that children have access to, families have access to, may limit that. And so I think children need to be physically active during COVID. I think that physical education teachers should be trying to look at ways for kids to play games and basically playground games that are safe to do inside and that don't require a lot of displacement in terms of movement, but that they can do in front of the camera. I'm sorry, I don't have good solutions there. My best advice is get vaccinated. That's probably returning to normal is our best hope for solving that. I've seen teachers struggle mightily in the United States with online learning, and at best it's a band-aid approach. It's not their fault. They weren't trained to do this, and our subject matter is a lot darn harder than other subject matters to do online.
Thank you, Professor. Next question from Mrs. Dwi. You said that a physical education, in line with the previous question, must be expert in some games or sport. However, not all physical education teacher master all of the basic techniques. Is it possible if they use such as an videos on YouTube to replace them in practicing the basic technique?
If you're talking about online, I think that's fine. I think if teachers are able to show that to students, that's good. I think the question is if you gave a typical teacher or any of us 5 different activities. Suppose I gave you gymnastics, dance, badminton, soccer, and gymnastics. And I said, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Nobody would be rating themselves 10 on every activity. It's just not likely that would be the case. So we're not really talking about experts. We're really talking about competence. It's been my experience, some teachers are experts in some areas, but what we want is competence. And I'm simply suggesting that a teacher can, we don't live long enough to become an expert in all the sports and activities we teach. And we teach a lot. So better to teach fewer activities, but teach them really well and spend your time learning how to be good at that. That would be one way to do it. Another way would be to train teachers to be specialists in teacher education in 1 or 2 areas, as they do in China. And those folks would, in fact, become excellent badminton teachers and excellent soccer teachers, and maybe they only teach badminton throughout their career, or maybe switch partway through. Those are the solutions, I think, to helping teachers develop competence. However, a really good way to support them is to put in place strong professional development where teachers learn from other teachers, and making opportunities for teachers to talk about how they teach content. That would be a very powerful way to deal with the current situation where we have teachers teaching a lot of content. I think there are many solutions out there, but they all require a reasonable investment.
Okay, thank you. Last question from Mr. Bayu, related with this pandemic COVID-19 like now. How do we as physical education teachers prepare for a new era such as pandemic? Is it the technologies become the most important thing that should be prepared by PE teachers?
Yeah, this is again very difficult. There is an argument out there that if you look at the fitness industry, that you put your exercise bike at home and you get online and you ride your bike. There are weight training programs that are online that you do watching on video. You can go to YouTube and pull up any number of yoga or physical activity videos and go along and copy them. I'm not sure that that's going to be an effective route for the majority of the population. I'd like to think we will never get away from group activities because of the social nature of sport, or doing yoga in a group, or playing badminton in a competition. And so I think my personal opinion is, as soon as we come out of the pandemic, we will probably be moving more similarly than different in terms of how we were moving before the pandemic. I'm hoping by 2022, we will be pretty close to normal, but a lot of that depends on the global effects of the pandemic, not just in any one country.
Okay, thank you, Professor Phillips. I move to the second term to Professor Azam. Question we have, sorry, we have 4 questions. Question number 1 from me as personally. Professor Azam, you said that in the previous presentation, we have get a new news, yeah, right? Good news and bad news. Good news is New Zealand now open music concert up to 50,000 spectators without health protocol, because the case is in New Zealand is only 1 in this year. And bad news is India is being attacked by second wave or tsunami of COVID-19. Even the case rise 3 times from the last peak, I think. In your opinion, what should we do to end this pandemic in Indonesia? I think our awareness is not a little bit different with India. Some people still ignore to do health protocol. And as far as I know, the trigger of the second wave in India caused by ritual, right? In Ganga River and community events. Little bit, not little bit too different with Indonesia. What do you think, Professor Azam?
Yes, of course, you have 2 news, yeah, good news and bad news as well. Yeah, of course, we must notice that the threatness of the second wave cases of COVID-19 must be noticed, must be have a full alert. Yeah, I think this is multifactorial, like I said before in my presentation. The first maybe related to the social activities, religion activities, and now we facing the Idul Fitri ceremony, and yeah, we must conduct the preventive measure or the health protocol as good as we can. This is the one thing that we must consider and notice. And the other thing, like in my previous presentation, we must avoid the premature euphoria. Premature euphoria, if we have the downtrend the cases and epidemiology data, we cannot happy with this condition and then loosen our preventive measures, our health protocol. But we must always always notice of this since the pandemic is not over, pandemic is not finished yet. Yeah, and this is we must do. And regarding the vaccination, yes, we must rise or increase the coverage of the vaccination, the vaccination rate in Indonesia as well. And regarding the vaccination itself, we also must avoid the masking effect. The masking effect is like we use the mask, so it's cover the reality. The reality of the vaccine is an ongoing study, ongoing research. So we didn't know exactly the effectiveness of the vaccine. So the key message, the take-home message is always do the preventive measures. Even you have you get the vaccine. Yeah, we administered the vaccine is not mean that we disobey or we ignore the preventive measures of COVID-19. And yeah, the other thing is new mutant. Yeah, the new mutant of COVID-19, the mutation, the new variant. Yeah, from India itself, from UK. Yeah, we must go straight for the containment or the what is it, the in the border, in the airport, in the harbor, the quarantine, the testing must be done properly. And yeah, I think the regulation of this condition must be have a priority in our country. So every stakeholder, not just the government, yeah, people have contribution on this prevention. By doing it, it will be also cool to the cool like New Zealand, yeah, for the a year of free of cases. Free of cases mean that the test conducted, not low number of the testing. I think in my opinion, like this.
Yeah, because some people in Indonesia makes the vaccination become a first guardian, right? Not the health protocol with the first. I am immune, so I can free without the mask, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the same question from Munirah, because Indonesia still use traditional or like community events. We still conduct the community event, so that's why we ignore the health protocol, right? The next question from Mrs. Dian, question to Dr. Azam, how a good exercise program after COVID-19? It means now, yeah, now in COVID-19 pandemic, especially for the elderly, to increase the immunity.
Okay. Oh yeah, during pandemic, yeah. Maybe the she means the during pandemic, yeah. For the exercise, we must do exercise to strengthen, to increase our immunity. Yeah, because the exercise will increase our immunity. This is a common knowledge, and we know about that. So the pandemic is not avoid this, and what kind of exercise is this aerobic exercise that we must do, not the high intensity exercise, but just like low and medium intensity, because high intensity exercise will treat our immunity, will decrease our immunity if we do the high intensity. And we must also consider the type of exercise, because we must conduct the exercise, but we also must the preventive measures. It means we limit the exercise that go in a group. Yeah, we must conduct the physical distancing, and of course there is some limit of using mask, of wearing mask during activities. So we must consider to do the exercise solitarily, or if not in the private or individual activities, we must conduct the physical distancing activity in the exercise. I think that's all. The highlight is do the medium intense exercise, and always notice the preventive measures of COVID-19.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Azam. Last question to Mr. Azam from Dr. Titin regarding to the efficacy or efficiency. It means, I think, efficacy of vaccine in Indonesia, about the branding, some branding of vaccination. What do you think about the now we use in Indonesia and the future vaccine like Nusantara or Merah Putih vaccine? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's a nice question. Regarding the vaccination, like I presented before, that the vaccination of COVID-19 developing is unique, because we facing the very rapid transmission of very rapid spread of disease. So the regular step, the regular clinical trial is being shortened. It means in my previous presentation, in one step must be conducted in 30 months, but in COVID-19 just 6 months, even skip several or certain steps. This condition is affect and influence the conclusion of the study. Yeah, we limit to take a conclusion. So the effectiveness, the efficacy is undergoing process. I think it's the first term that we must agree with this condition. And I think the kind of vaccination, there is every vaccination that conform the special step. I think it's makes sense to use, and maybe Dr. Titin asked about the effectiveness of vaccine that developed in Indonesia, Merah Putih and Nusantara, Merah Putih and
Nusantara.
This yes, Nusantara vaccine. This under development, under research and team platform, of course. Yeah, vaksin putih, I think develop the different platform with Nusantara, and I cannot say which better. I think you can found in the public publication, but we limit access the scientific publication, but maybe you can also access the popular publication regarding the two kind of vaccine that developed in Indonesia. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my highlight is the vaccination efficacy must be conform the scientific step, even the specific or certain step in preclinical and clinical trial in COVID-19 vaccine development.
Okay. Next question,
I think
Dr.
that's all.
Azam.
Okay. Next question, Dr. Azam.
In the next semester, I think some school and campus will open to receive the school in the class, yeah, or lecturing in the class. Do you personally agree?
Yeah. Uh, it is must consider many factors. Yeah. I will agree, absolutely 100 agree, if the preventive measures health protocol conducted well. Every people, every government, every school manager, every institution ready and have commitment to conduct to do the preventive measure. I think it is okay. Yeah, actually, there is no what is it? No negative effect of the preventive measure to the economic or to the school activities. We can conduct the school activities, but we must conduct the preventive measure, like in all aspect, yeah, of the system, the standard procedure, and then the what is it, the awareness for the people itself, for the student, for the teacher, and then also the readiness of the facilities must be prepared as well. The facilities is also related to the preparing of some kind of hand sanitizer, like when disinfect the surfaces, yeah, and then proper exchange in class, etc. Yeah, we must consider this, but we know that how about the people readiness?
Hello, Dr. Azam. Hello, check. Okay, I think Dr. Azam has answered the all questions. Now we come to the end of the session, but before we close the session, I will deliver the conclusion from Professor Philip said that the teacher education must improve the teaching of common content knowledge, and the teacher education must do considerably better at teaching specialized content knowledge, and teachers in the field must receive specific professional development support. And Professor Azam said that the key point to control the pandemic is surveillance system, screening, contact tracing, social distancing, and public communication and health education. Finally, we come to the end of the session. I would like to say thanks again to Professor Phillips and Professor Azam for the interesting discussion. Let's give once a big round of applause for our speakers. Thank you. Hopefully, this session will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you for your attention. And I return to my colleague, Professor Billy. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Mr. Lukman. And before we continue our agenda, I would like to say thank you again for the invited speakers, Professor Philip Ward, PhD, and also Associate Professor Dr. Mahalul Azam, who already give a lot of knowledge and sharing regarding their expertise. And also, I would like to say warmest welcome to all delegation from Bangkok Thonburi University, Thailand, and also from ACPES member and from the ICSSPE member. I also would like to say welcome to our conference, the next speakers, invited speakers, Professor Feng Hua from Hong Kong, and also Professor Jun Ho Kang from Seoul, Korea, and also from Universitas Negeri Semarang, Assistant Professor Doni Wirayuda Kusuma. And also, I would like to remind you if the link for attendance will be shared anytime during the session. So please be attention and keep your microphone mute as well as turn on your camera. Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, the next plenary session will be moderated by the Vice Chief of Committee. She got 2 master degrees from the Ohio State University and Universitas Negeri Semarang with expertise in English for a specific purpose. Please welcome the one and only Assistant Professor Fatona Suraya, SPD, MA, MPD.
Peserta didik,
Oke.
kepala sekolah, dan lain-lainnya, pengawas juga untuk tambah punya kemampuan. Bapak Ibu.
Unmute your microphone because your microphone is still in mute mode.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Billy Castiana, for the chance given to me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ramadan Mubarak for all of us. It is an honor and a privilege for me to lead this third plenary session of the webinar, the international webinar on Sport, Health, and Physical Education organized by Faculty of Sports Science Universitas Negeri Semarang in collaboration with ACPES. I'm Fatona Suraya. I'll be your moderator for this third plenary sessions. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to share the screens. All right. Before we start the plenary, I would like to read some rules for participants. First, please turn on your camera and turn off your microphone. Please behave appropriately during the webinar. Any question can be asked through chat menu. In the end of the webinar, we will inform the URL link of attendance and evaluation form of ISMINA 2021 for issuing the e-certificate. So stay tuned on Zoom and YouTube. The URL link is active for only 60 minutes after the third plenary session is over. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in this third plenary session, we have 3 speakers. Professor Jun Ho Kang, PhD from Seoul National University, South Korea. Professor Doni Wirayuda Kusuma, PhD from Universitas Negeri Semarang, and Professor Bob Feng Hua Sun, PhD from the Education University of Hong Kong. 3 of them will deliver their topics about sport industry, sport psychology, and sport exercise. Ladies and gentlemen, in this third plenary session, after all the speakers deliver the topic for each 30 minutes, I will open the questions and answer for the audience. All the audience are pleased to write the question in the chat menu. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time for the first speaker of these plenary sessions. Professor Dr. Jun Ho Kang, PhD, will deliver a speech on sport industry in the age of pandemic. He is the Dean of Office of Planning and Coordination, Seoul National University. He is also a director of Dream Together Master Program and Professor of Sport Management, Department of Sports Science, Seoul National University. He graduated with his PhD on sport management from the University of Michigan and his MBA from the University of Pennsylvania and his BA in kinesiology from Seoul National University. He has an excellent track record of accomplishing projects and publishing above 45 articles in prestigious journals and 8 books. His expertise lies in sport market, sport event, sport sponsorship, and sport system. Let's welcome Professor Dr. Jun Ho Kang, PhD. The screen is yours. Prof. Junho, I cannot, yes, okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Hello, everyone. I'm Junho Kang, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to participate in this prestigious conference. And I'm very happy to be part of this conference. And I'm going to share with my thoughts on the sport industry in the age of pandemic. Because of the limited time, I may a little bit in a hurry to deliver my speeches. And let me share with my. Okay. Do you see my slide? It's okay? All right. I'm going to talk about today, I'd like to share with the concept of sport industry. What is sport industry? And then I'm going to introduce you what I have figured out as a framework to understand the sport market, which is called the Sport Market Value Network. And then thirdly, I'm going to briefly talk about the impact of COVID-19 outbreak to the sport industry. Okay, sport industry has been one of the most popular terms since 1990, after the end of Cold War era. But I easily realized that the many people are using the sport industry with the different meanings. Some people think about Major League Baseball, like a professional sports league. But the others are thinking sport industry as the sporting equipment goods like a Nike, or sport media like a ESPN, or sport marketing company or IMG, or the fitness or sports club like a New York Sports Club. So we don't have the common agreed definition of the sport industry. Let me briefly overview about the literature on the sport industry. Although there are many studies, we can categorize the sport industry literature into 4 categories. First one is focusing on the relationship between sport producing organizations and supporting organizations. Many of the early studies are focusing on this aspect. The second category is emphasizing the consumption of the sport when they conceptualize the sport industry, like Humphreys and Howard. The third group is utilizing the concept of GDP, and this approach is taken by the economists usually, like Meek in 1997. The fourth category is primarily used by the governments in East Asia, Japan, Korea, and Chinese. They are using standard industrial classifications. In East Asia, Japan started to conceptualize the sport industry for the first time in 1990. They made a report of the Sports Vision 21, And they announced what the sport industry is and categorized sport industry into three sectors, which is sporting goods manufacturing industry, sports space industry, and sports service industries. They focused on the tangible hardware or goods. In 10 years later, Korean government followed the similar concept and then categorized into three categories, but with a little bit different names. But fundamentally, the concept is the same: the sporting goods industry, sport facility operating industry, and sport facility industry. And another 10 years later, Chinese government also took the same type of categorization. The common thing among the three governments is that they use the standard industrial classification. Standard industrial classification is a way of categorizing all the industries in the world based on the commonality of products, production process, and depending on the similarity, they categorize into about 11 general directory, and then they subcategorize under each category. So it is composed of 5-digit classification code. If you look at those classification codes, we don't see any sports here, but the three governments began to look at which category has some parts of the sport-related industries. They try to identify, and then they delete the industries which are not related to sports. And the remaining structure of the sport-related sub-industries are the three categories, what the three governments officially announced in their statistics, which are the sporting goods industry, sports facility operating industry, and sports service industries. But this standard industrial classification utilization has merits of easily identifying subcategories of the sport industry, and they calculate the statistics in easier way. But the problem is, it's really hard to capture what the sport industries look like. So it's basically, it's like display all the components of the car. If we display the car's components like this, we cannot see how the car looks like. So the problem is, when we teach the sport industry or try to find out the unique characteristics of the sport industry, this way of categorization has serious problems. So these are another common problems of existing studies. This kind of approaches is a supplier's perspective, because the standard industrial classification is based on the suppliers or providers' perspective. And the terminology industry refers to an aggregation of the producers or suppliers of similar products. So when you say the automobile industry or computer industry, this is defined as the collection of computer providers like a Samsung, LG, or Hewlett-Packard. So the terminology, when you say the sport industry, it's logically, it should be the collection of the providers of the sports product. But when you say the sport industry, there are different kinds of very heterogeneous product categories you can find in the market. So it is logically contradictory to use the term sport industry, because the sport should be the same kind of product category to be used as a combination word of the sport industry. So the structure and the characteristics of the real sport world are not reflected in the existing sport industry conceptualization taken by Japanese, Korean, and Chinese government. When you say the golf industry, for example, golf itself is not a product. Golf itself is a terminology to express the institution and the whole culture related to the golf activity. But when you say the product, it should have a specific type of product category. It should be ball, or it should be the broadcasting right, or it should be golf club, or lessons, or membership card, or endorsement package by the Tiger Woods. Although they are related to the golf, the specific type of the product categories are very, very heterogeneous. So I called it the golf-derived product. So I came up with the sport-derived product to understand the sport industry. So my conclusion was the sport industry is a new kind of industry different from the traditional industry classified by standard industrial classification. A sport converges with other industries and bear dynamic relationships through which various heterogeneous products are generated centering around the sport. So we have to change the perspective from supplier's perspective to the market perspective. Market perspectives include suppliers, customers, and the product as a whole. It's like looking from the sky to the land. That's the market perspective. So the sport market should be understood as a collection of producers, distributors, and consumers of various sport-derived products. So I came up with the concept, the Sport Market Value Network in 2012, which is defined as a value-connected network generated by sport-derived products. So each sport, such as soccer, baseball, or basketball, has its own institution and culture deriving various forms of products, so-called sport-derived products. Let's say basketball derived NBA, the American National Basketball League. That sport events derived another product, which is called the broadcasting right. That product is deriving one more time another product, which is mediated sports program, which is sport content. So each sport-derived product has its own market, which means its own suppliers and buyers and sellers or distributors. So Sport Market Value Network is a collection of these markets. More specifically, Sport Market Value Network is based on sport institution and its own culture. And this value network consists of two parts. One is primary market and the other is derivative market. Primary market consists of two pillars. The end users in the sport market are involved in sports in either one of the two forms. One is actually participating, or the other is watching the other players play. So I called the watching market is spectator market. The other is the participant market. These two pillars create another derivative market. So if I use the diagram, it can be expressed in this way. On the bottom, there is a sport-related institution like a law, facilities, and finance, and school systems, and so on. So institution and culture is the foundation of the sport market. On top of that, there are two pillars. One is spectator market, the other is participant market. And above the primary market, there are various derivative markets are created. More specifically, I can express in using this table. The sport institution has its own culture and legal systems and all the foundations regarding spectator sport and participant sport. Each of the institutions deriving or creating primary market, which include spectator sport market and participant sport market. And spectator sport market is divided into two categories. One is professional sport event market, the other is amateur sport event market. Participant sport market is also includes two categories. One is event market and the other is non-event market. Non-event market is just a casual participation, like a weekend golfer or tennis player. The event market is sports for all events are staged in many countries, and that kind of market. And each of the four primary markets can derive generically about 9 to 10 derivative markets, from human resource market and to sporting goods market, facilities market, media and information market, sponsorship market, merchandising and licensing market, and sport betting market, sports tourism market, and finally, sport management services market. So the relationship between those sport institution, primary markets, and derivatives are defined by the sport market value network. And one characteristics of the sport market network is this assumption. A total sport market value network is the summation of individual sport market value network. Let's say soccer can have its own sport market value network. Baseball can have its own market value network, and basketball, golf, and volleyball. So depending on the society and country, the summation portfolio of the sport market value network could be different. And if I use the mathematics, the sport market value network expressed in this way, but I'm gonna skip this one without detailed explanation. I have applied this sport market value network to estimate the Korean sport industry in 2012. The total size of the Korean sport market was $33.6 billion. And about among them, the spectator sport market was $4.9 billion. And participant sport market was $28.7 billion. On the other side, primary markets, total size is $15.7 billion. And the size of derivative market was $17.9 billion. So if we use this sport market value network, you can understand the Korean sport industry systematically and or much creatively. I can analyze the Korean markets and one more time, and for the derivative markets, for each of the four primary markets, I told you that the primary market can derive about 10 categories of derivative markets. Let's say professional sport event market, deriving $26 million of human resource market and $31 million of sporting goods market. And surprisingly, professional sport event market is creating $3 billion in Korea. It's abnormally, in a large and compared with other kinds of derivative markets. And also we can find the participant sport non-event market. That primary market creates $9 billion of sporting goods markets, but all the others, they do not create or very little markets. So we can capture what the Korean sport industry looks like, and what's the shape and the size and its structure. And moreover, we analyze one more time depending on the professional sport category, like baseball, soccer, men's basketball, women's basketball. I try to analyze how much of the derivative markets and what kind of derivative market categories are created by each of the different professional sports. For example, horse racing is creating $1.9 billion of the betting market, which is one of the biggest, the derivative market under the professional sport primary market. And this comes up, the total size is $4.0 billion. And this table shows how this total $4 billion are decomposed by this framework. And also, we can apply this sport market value network to understand a specific sport. Let's say the Korean golf market. In 2017, I analyzed 2015 Korean golf market value network. Its size is $9.7 billion, and it consists of its spectator market is just a 3%, and all the others, 97%, are participant sport market. And on the axis of primary versus derivative market, 41.7% are primary markets, and 58.95% is the derivative market. So let me summarize the characteristics of the sport market value network. It could play a role of map to describe the structure of the sport market. And also it can be used flexibly to reflect the dynamic change of the value network. And given the fast-changing environment in this modern business, we need a flexible framework to understand this changing structure of the sport industry. And also, we can apply this market value network to understand individual sport market. That's the one merit of this framework. And also, we can focus on specific sector within sport market value network and its relationship with others. And also, we can cater to various definitions of the sport industry because it covers all the markets. Depending on the sport industry definition, we can capture all different angles of the sport industry. And also, it provides the implications for non-industrial sport policy because it is assuming that the primary market is based on the sport institution and culture. Let me briefly overview of the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the sport industry. And the global sport industry revenue in 2020 has declined by 42%. It's significant impact. In case of Korean sport industry, the revenue was decreased by 33.8%, and number of employees was laid off about 33.4%. Okay, if we focus on spectator sport market and the global sport event, in case of global sport event, about 46% of the events were canceled.
Excuse me, Prof. Junho, you have 5 minutes more.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Thank you.
And for US professional sports market, about $5 billion of revenue was lost. And in Korean's professional sports market, we lost 85.5% of spectators. And the cumulative loss of revenue was $225 million. And as you know, the Tokyo 2020 was postponed, and the IOC financially assisted $150 million for international federations and National Olympic Committees. They also provide $650 million to the Tokyo OCOG. And also Tokyo and Japan was impacted negatively because of this postpone. And economic loss was due to excluding overseas spectators was $15 billion. And negative effect on the Japanese economy was $1.8 billion. And so all the postponed cost was $1.8 billion. Let me skip this. And broadcasting rights, Forbes estimated $1 billion of loss in TV commercial revenue of the TV network, partnered with NBA and MLB or NHL due to the COVID-19. And in Korea's sport broadcasting market, we have surprisingly, we have a positive or surprising result. The Korea Professional Baseball League began the 2020 season, although all the other world's professional sports had stopped due to the COVID-19. So KBO was the only professional league in the world. They began to sell their media rights to the 130 countries. K-League also sold the broadcasting rights to more than 43 countries. So the Korean professional market received the global attention because of the COVID-19. The sponsorship market was decreased by 33%, which is $46.1 billion. And participant sport market declined by 6.5%. And the number of participants was decreased by, the 6.5%. And domestic market, at-home workout has increased significantly, and home training equipment and training clothes increased 88% and 71% respectively. And another characteristics of the Korean participant market was the golf industry. The golf industry was enjoying the great increase. The golf club's operating margin increased more than 30%. The size of the domestic golf wear market has increased by 11%. So the participant sport market has both negative and positive impacts due to caused by the COVID-19 outbreak. Okay, this is it. Thank you very much for listening.
You are very welcome. Would you please to stop the share screen?
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Jun Ho Kang from Seoul for the very comprehensive information on the sport industry in the time of pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you
Ladies
very
and
much.
gentlemen, please allow me to share screens for the next coming moderator. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the second speakers of the third plenary session. We have here with us Professor Doni Wirayuda Kusuma, PhD. He is the Vice Head of Physical Education, Sport and Recreation, Sports Science Faculty, Universitas Negeri Semarang. He graduated with his PhD from the Central China Normal University, China, and he got his Master of Education in Physical Education, Universitas Negeri Semarang, and his Bachelor in Physical Education, Health and Recreation, Universitas Negeri Semarang. He has an excellent track record of accomplishing projects and publishing above 24 articles in prestigious journals. His expertise lies in sports psychology and physical education. Let's welcome Professor Doni Wirayuda Kusuma, PhD. The screen is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Miss Suraya, and the honorable speakers, Dr. Chun Hu Kang and Dr. Pop Feng Hua Sun. This is my honorable to be part of the speakers in this seminar. Today, I will share information about my understanding about sports psychology effect on during a pandemic. My title is Global Pandemic on Sports, Sports Psychological View. My paper is start from the condition of competition during pandemic, before pandemic, during pandemic, and after our new normal pandemic. You can see MU has have a lot of spectators, and during COVID, they closed, and then in the new normal, they also have a competition, but without spectators. And also in badminton, it's my export. You can see Indonesia is the biggest fans of badminton. You can see in Istora before COVID is very large of spectators, and during COVID from 1 year, there is no competition, is no spectator to be watched, and now in new normal, competition is still play but without the spectators. The news of the recently of an England Indonesian team, they cancel for the competition of badminton player because Indonesian player got how to say, flight with the player with the COVID, so they canceled the tournament in All England. The effect of pandemic on sport and society, my focus in 5 items. For the first item is sport tournament. There is canceled sport tournament event or rescheduled sport tournament event or tournament without spectators. And secondly, sport facility access. Sport facility, all the country is closed. Access with provision, and you must use face mask, distancing, social distancing, and others. And sport industry, as we said from Dr. Jun, organizing leagues, sport event, travel business, tourism, infrastructure, transportation, catering, and media broadcasting lost all the money. And also from the social culture, disintegration in communication and socio-cultural norms and value. And also in public health. This is my mapping of the some of article. Sport tournament is canceled or rescheduled or without spectator. It can be impact on uncertainty of the competition, athlete losing contract of sponsorship, and because the reschedule of sport tournament, so athlete must be rescheduled of the exercise program. Social distancing between athlete and other athletes or with the coach, because of the losing the contract from sponsorship, some athlete maybe have a problem with the family because all of the money from to living with the family is from the contract from sponsorship, so it's make a problem in family. And coach-athlete relationship maybe it's different before pandemic and now pandemic, mental health and psycho-biosocial state. And the main focus is the psychological effect is from that phenomena, yeah, athlete will be experiences mood, they reduce the mood, motivation, enjoyment, sleep disorder, stress, depression, boredom, and sadness, fear being affected, OCD, and anxiety. I will explain from the psychological effect one by one. First, uncertainty. The high level of uncertainty about the condition of future events may have a severe financial impact on the wider domain of sport and society, affecting elite athletes as well as children and adults who participate in recreational sporting activity, makes athletes more depressed, anxious, and with other psychiatric disorders. And the second is a losing contract. Some of sport organization, event organizer, leagues, and club are and will be facing several financial challenges as they work to overcome a significant loss of income and may be headed toward financial instability caused by COVID. On commerce, employment, sponsorship, and our everyday life. Many sports clubs will not be able to cope with a lucrative player contract and will seek their mutual or unilateral termination. For example, I have a friend from badminton athlete. The salary is only from the badminton. If they losing contract, so they losing of the financial supporting. This is a very sadness for him. And this, next, the schedule of exercise program. Professional athletes are also under pressure to reschedule their training while trying to stay fit at home, and they risk losing professional sponsors who may not support them as initially agreed, and also caused by reschedule of sport tournament. Next, mental health problem. The rate of reported mental health concern experienced. So the mental health is the 1.5 or 2 times higher than have been historically reported. This is reported from the NCAA student athlete in pre-pandemic studies during pandemics. Social distancing, of course, makes athletes keeping a safe space with other people, but it have a negative effects such as relationship with others. You can see this is the apparel sponsorship announcement January to March. The global data is down from the high to drop. And then also Menpora reschedule of the PON in Indonesian competition and also for the Olympics. The effect of athlete, another effect is grief or sadness. The National College athletes associated with a poll for more than 37,000 student athletes in the early weeks of the pandemic and discovered that 13% athlete experiences sadness because of COVID. Psycho-biosocial. Pandemic had a strong detrimental impact on perceived stress and psycho-biosocial state of athletes, with significant increase of stress and dysfunctional psycho-biosocial states, and significant decrease of functional psycho-biosocial state compared to situation prior to COVID. And also family conflict, contributing factor for family conflict during pandemic increase such as job loss, tight finance, and constant close proximity to partner and children. Coach athlete, but it is different from the coach athlete relationship. For this item, after lockdown are higher than those before lockdown. which is contrary to our expected result based on common sense. Next, it's psycho-inflexibility. It's about gender, social media, and psychological inflexibility, were significant predictor of both depression and anxiety. You can see this is the coach and athlete relationship, the high relationship during pandemic. There are closeness, commitment, and complementary increased after the COVID-19 lockdown. Now it's psychological effect for the athlete during pandemic. First is mental recovery. The COVID-19 crisis in some cases has put additional pressure on athletes because of the need to accelerate league season, leaving less time for physical and mental recovery between games, which could potentially contribute to an increased risk of sport-related injury and fatigue. Number two is boredom. Of course, athletes also to social distancing and the activity just in his room, and while at the same time reducing behavioral option from affiliating boredom. Fear of being infected. Others were getting infected just like everyone else. There's the added sense of loss from restriction put on their practice session and competition, which can affect their progression in their sport. And also because their mental health is not good, so in the enjoyment during exercise is reduced. To inability to relate to other people. Uncertainty of matches, limited access to sport can make athletes feel less happy in training, and this can reduce athlete motivation and enjoyment. And also motivation, some study result, lower motivation score for older athletes, expert, athlete practicing and competing at the lower level, and athlete without training program during the lockdown. Study saw less than 1% of pro athletes infected by COVID and also developed inflammatory heart disease. So effect of the COVID have another implication. Number 6, OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder. Athletes are exceedingly worried about the contamination and germ and infection at the baseline. It can really throw things out the control. Some athletes have sent picture of their hand literally scrubbed down to the underlying muscle and tissue, and it's not necessarily fear that they're going to become ill themselves, but fear that they're going to contaminate others. Another effect is depression. The psychological influence of the coronavirus on competitive players is actually increased due to the discontinuation of the regular training routine and special support network, which can be vital element in handling anxiety or depression for some athletes. Adverse behavior during pandemic found that higher level of anxiety, higher level of depression and loss of the mood, and also stress were found in relation to physical activity change. Some athletes have a problem with the sleep and the smoking and alcohol habits. Next is mood. COVID-19 transmission has been dramatic increase in global mood disorder, also differentially impact the mood state of community athletes. And also stress. Because longer quarantine duration, infection fears, inadequate information, financial loss, and stigma represent high stress factors. You can see the picture of the OCD. Some athletes have making some OCD scrub their hands down to the underlying muscle and tissue, always washing the hand. And you can see symptom of depression and anxiety, fatigue, and insomnia in different gender groups. three last for the psychological effect from the pandemic is insomnia or a sleep disorder. Pandemic and associated lockdown measures have affected the life of athletes. Researchers found a significant increase in total sleep time and sleep latency, as well as delay in mid-sleep times and a decrease in social jet lag. And also eating disorder, studies have some that feeling of helplessness and fear of loss of control are often of the center of the disorder eating, and so can understand why with COVID-19 we're wiping out any sense of certainty in 2020. Unhealthy eating is on the rise among athletes. And the last is loneliness. During pandemic, the assist the general population with social isolation and feeling of loneliness. Athletes who felt conscious over as the concern of COVID-19, travel bans were falling, may find themselves feeling alone and isolated as those around them do not understand their experience and cannot provide the comfort they need. There's a lot of psychological effect from the pandemic. So after this, I give some suggestion how to reduce this psychological negative of the athlete and coach. There is one is strengthening the psychological component has a significant impact on training and recovery condition. Social interaction, you must say hello with your family. You must say hello or always communication, always make an interaction with your friend. And the third tips, self-awareness and self-efficacy, called improve of adaptive stress reaction. So you know yourself is a good tips for you to improve the adaptation of stress reaction. Mental health management, you can meet the psychotherapy, counseling athletes with family or group psychotherapy, and engaging stakeholder in decision making is not our power. So we
Yang Jawa Tengah, Andri UNNES.
be thirsty for roles to identify solution is a lot if a lot of information is given. Use communication technology, it can help to interact during independent practice. So Zoom like this, WhatsApp is good for you to make communication with others. This is help you to keep in touch with your friend. It is give advantages to you to improve your mental health. Use exercise alternative if there are restrictions on access to sport facilities. You can make exercise in your room, on your home, or maybe in the sport facility without the social distancing is good for you. Conditioning exercise, and then relaxation techniques such as meditation. If you Muslim, you can salat or zikir, prayer, mindfulness, body scan, deep breathing, or another exercise. And also the last is adequate nutritional consumption. This is good for you because have a good nutrition food. This is help you to make you health, and this is benefit for your stress, for your psychological adaptation. No, this is my presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very nice presentations and very inspiring, Dr. Doni Wirayuda. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, can you stop the share screen, please, Dr. Doni? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now the time for us to call the third speaker of this plenary session. I'd like to introduce you to Prof. Bob Fenghua Sun, PhD, who will deliver a speech on macronutrients in exercise, possible benefits of carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion. He is from Health and Physical Education, the Education University of Hong Kong. He got his PhD from Department of Sports Science and Physical Education, Chinese University of Hong Kong, and he got his MED from Shanghai Sport University and National Research Institute of Sport Medicine, Shanghai and Beijing, China. He got his Bachelor of Medicine from Jining Medical University, Jining, Shandong, China. He has an excellent track record of accomplishing projects and publishing above 37 articles in prestigious journals. His expertise lies in nutritional and metabolic aspects of exercise, nutrition and body weight control, and physical activity, nutrition, and health promotion. Let's welcome Professor Bob Fenghua Sun, PhD. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. So let me share my screen firstly. Okay, so good morning everyone. So it's my great honor and pleasure to be invited to give this presentation. So my name is Bob, and is currently an assistant professor in Department of Health and Physical Education in Education University of Hong Kong. So the topic of my presentation is the macronutrients in exercise, possible benefits of carbohydrates and protein co-ingestion. So today, actually, I would like to briefly introduce several studies completed by our research group in recent years. Because of time, I may not provide very detailed information because all these papers have been published. So if you want to look into the detail, you are very welcome to find these publications, these published papers through the internet or contact me. Okay. So let me check. It seems that the okay, sorry. So actually, carbohydrates and protein are two commonly used macronutrients. For carbohydrate, actually, we all know that it has many important functions in sports nutrition or in sports. So especially it's the most important energy source for moderate to high intensity exercise. Actually, International Olympic Committee has suggested that for events lasting for an hour or more, actually carbohydrates are strongly recommended to be consumed before events and during events. So before events, athletes should consume some carbohydrate-rich foods. So this will make sure that athletes can begin their competition with adequate carbohydrate stores, especially for their muscle and liver glycogen storage. For the during events, they are also suggested or strongly recommended to ingest some small amounts of carbohydrates, which can enhance cognitive and physical performance. Okay, for events lasting more than 3 hours, actually, because a large amount of carbohydrates are necessary to maintain their athletes as a good status. So athletes actually are recommended to practice consuming carbohydrates during training to develop an individual strategy, because it may not be appropriate for athletes to consume a large amounts of carbohydrates during events. Also, athletes are recommended to make use of sports food and sports drinks, which contain some carbohydrate combinations. For the protein, also it is well-known macronutrients, and it has many different important functions, especially for the recovery of muscle or improvement of muscular strength and muscular power. So International Olympic Committee has suggested that dietary protein should be consumed in daily amounts greater than those recommended for the general population. But varied diets that meet energy needs will generally provide the protein in excess of requirements, which means that if you can have a high quality daily food or daily meal, actually it may be enough for their protein intake. However, foods or snacks that contain high quality proteins should be consumed regularly through their day as part of their day's total protein intake. And in particular, soon after exercise, in quantities sufficient to maximize the synthesis of protein to aid in long-term maintenance or gain of muscle and bone and in the repair of damaged tissues. Actually, I highlighted 3 terms: high quality proteins, soon after exercise, and in quantities sufficient. So I think that we should pay more attention to the quality of protein and the consumption time of protein, as well as the quantities. So we must consume sufficient protein to maximize the recovery. So these are general recommendations for the consumption of carbohydrate and protein for athletes or for different sports events. Actually, further potential benefits of protein and carbohydrate co-ingestion has been investigated a lot. For example, like showed in this slides, so Professor Louis Burke published one paper in 2011, which investigated the effect of carbohydrate and carbohydrate protein co-ingestion to their muscle glycogen synthesis. So according to this figure, so let me show the report. Okay, so actually through this figure, so this line shows the carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion, and this line shows the carbohydrate ingestion. So according to this review paper, so we can see that if the carbohydrate ingestion rate is lower than 0.8 gram per kilogram body weight per hour, so generally carbohydrate protein co-ingestion will be better than the carbohydrate ingestion only. However, if the carbohydrate ingestion rate is higher than 1.2 gram per kilogram per hour, so shows that the carbohydrate and carbohydrate protein have the similar effects on muscle glycogen synthesis. Okay, so which means that carbohydrate amount actually is an important factor to determine the effects of carbohydrate and carbohydrate protein co-ingestion. Okay, so based on these studies, actually our group has conducted a series of studies to investigate the potential benefits of carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion for exercise. Today, so I would like to introduce these 3 areas. First one, rehydration. Second one, substrate metabolism and effective responses. And the third one is cognitive function. So firstly, let me introduce a little bit 2 studies about the rehydration. So we all know that rehydration is important for the athletes, especially after long-term, long-duration exercise. So for the effective rehydration strategies, 2 main factors may affect the effect of rehydration. That is volume and composition of drinks or solutions. So for the volume, it is generally recommended that athletes should consume equal to 150% of sweating-induced body weight loss after exercise. For the composition, actually 3 components are strongly recommended. They are sodium, potassium, and carbohydrate. So I think all of us should have known this very clear. Actually, there are many different kinds of sports drinks in the markets now. They usually contain some water, carbohydrate, and electrolytes, also defined as carbohydrate electrolyte solutions. Generally, all of them are helpful for the post-exercise rehydration. However, several studies completed by the Professor Ramon and Professor Susan Sheriff in UK in 2007 and 2008 found that low-fat milk may be more effective in fluid retention than the commonly used carbohydrate electrolyte solution or sports drink during post-exercise recovery. So we all know that protein is one important component in low-fat milk. Also, several further studies conducted by Dr. Lewis James in Loughborough University found that compared with a carbohydrate electrolyte solution, the greater fluid retention is also observed when added milk protein to the CE solutions, which means that protein, play an important role in the rehydration. However, we all know that milk protein contains both whey protein and casein protein. So whey protein may be around 20% and 80% are casein protein. So that will be a question. So whether whey protein or casein protein play a more important role in rehydration. So the purpose of the first study was to examine the effects of the addition of whey protein or casein protein to traditional carbohydrate electrolyte solution on post-exercise rehydration. Okay, so this slide shows the exercise protocol. So all participants, complete 60 minutes run at 65% VO2 max to lead to around 20% body weight loss. So after that, there will be 4 hours recovery. During the recovery, participants will be given one of 3 different solutions. So this is a crossover study design, which means that all participants complete 3 main trials. So the volume equal to 150% of body weight loss. This is also recommended by the different researchers. So during the recovery period, actually we collect some blood sample and urine sample and some subjective measures. Okay. So for the blood sample, we measure glucose, hemoglobin, hematocrit, plasma volume, and for urine, we measure the urine specific gravity, urine osmolality, urine volume. So the solution design, there are 3 different kinds of solutions. If you can see this table, we have a CE solution, CE plus whey protein solution, CW, and CE plus casein protein, CC solution. So the difference is that the CW solution has 22 gram per liter whey protein, and the CC group has 22 gram per liter casein protein. So all solutions were matched for the energy density and the electrolyte contents. So energy and the electrolyte contents were matched. So actually, I do not want to look at the detail of the results, but you can see that the 4 hours fluid retention, actually the CW solution maybe is better than the CE solution and the CC solution. So if you still remember, CW solution means carbohydrate plus whey protein solution. So we can conclude that during the 4 hours recovery after 60 minutes run, the CW solution means carbohydrate plus whey protein solution was more effective for rehydration compared with the CE or CC solution. Okay, so this paper was published in 2015. So after this study, because we found that CE solution plus whey protein was better than the CE solution in fluid retention. So this is the finding of the previous study. However, in another similar study conducted by Dr. James Group, reported that fluid retention was not different between isocaloric CE solution or CE plus whey protein solution during post-exercise recovery. So the inconsistent results between these two studies may come from the different exercise protocols, different participants, so on and so forth. And one important factor we think is that, you know, the protein concentration was 22 grams per liter in our study, and whereas in James' study, the protein content is 15 grams per liter. So we think that this may be the major reason. So we would like to design one study to investigate our hypothesis. So the purpose of this study was to examine the effects of various contents or various volumes of whey protein in carbohydrate electrolyte solution on post-exercise rehydration. Okay, similar exercise protocol. So participants complete 60 minutes run at 65% VO2 max. So during 4 hours recovery, actually participants were required to consume one of 5 different solutions, and their volume equal to 150% of body weight loss. Okay, similar measurements. So this is the design of 5 trials. So we can see that the CEH and CEL, the difference is that the carbohydrate contents. So the carbohydrate CEL means that the carbohydrate amount is lower than the CEH trial. We also designed 3 different carbohydrate protein combination, CWL, CWM, and CWH. So you can see the difference is that the whey protein is different. Okay. The whey protein in CWL is 50 grams per liter, and the CWM is 22 grams per liter, and the CWH is 33 grams per liter. This is the difference, and the energy has been matched. Okay, so you can see these 2 differences is that the CWH has more whey protein compared with CEL. Okay, the major finding shows in this slides, we found that the fluid retention actually is higher in CWM and CWH. So which means that a relatively high amount of whey protein when added into the carbohydrate electrolyte solution will be better for the rehydration. Okay, our conclusion is that rehydration was improved when whey protein, at least 22 grams per liter, was co-ingested with traditional carbohydrate electrolyte solution drinks during a full recovery. So this study was published in European Journal of Sports Science. So if you are interested, you are welcome to read this paper later. Okay. The next area will be the substrate metabolisms and effective responses. So I will introduce 3 studies. Firstly, I would like to introduce a little bit background for the study 3. So we all know that strenuous prolonged endurance exercise is quite common. For example, marathon. So actually, it's usually defined as exercise intensity is higher than 70% VO2 max and longer than 90 minutes. Actually, it's a challenge from both physiological and psychological perspectives. Okay, so actually, protein co-ingested with carbohydrate for the purpose of increasing muscle protein synthesis have been invested a lot and have been recommended. However, its effect on some psychological effects, for example, effective response, is still unknown. Another rationale or research gap of this study is that we all know that another type of protein, alpha-lactamine, has the highest tryptophan contents compared with whey protein or casein protein. So actually, in resting status, alpha-lactamine ingestion has been suggested to enhance some stress adaptation by improving mood, affects, and some other cognitive progresses. So purpose of this study was to investigate the effect of carbohydrate whey protein or carbohydrate and alpha-lactamine co-ingestion on some energy substrate metabolism biomarkers afford sense and effective responses during strenuous prolonged exercise. So this is the design of the treatments or solutions. We have 4 different kinds of solutions. So carbohydrate plus alpha-lactam CA group, carbohydrate plus whey protein isolates CW group, and the carbohydrate group, CC group, and control group. Okay, so the difference actually between the CA group and CW group is the tryptophan contents. So we can see clearly that the tryptophan contents in CA group is higher than the CW group. Okay, so for the energy, actually, these 3 groups were matched. So we recruited 10 male participants. Their VO2 max value is around 23. Complete these 3 trials in a crossover study design. So carbohydrate and protein contents matched. Okay. So this is the exercise protocol. Actually, all participants were required to complete 90 minutes running on treadmill at 70% VO2 max. Actually, at different time points, actually, we provide participants some drinks and do some measures, including their venous blood sample scale some subjective scale evaluation. So for the results, the key results is the muscle pain. Actually, we can see that the CW trial and the CC trial, actually, the muscle pain increased significantly. However, no significant increase in CA trial, means carbohydrate and alpha-lactam group. Also, we found that the CA induced significantly lower muscle pain than the control and the CW trial. So another interesting finding is that the pressure. Actually, we can see that the CA trial, means carbohydrate alpha-lactam trial, have a higher pressure level compared with other groups. So actually, we have many different measurements. For detail, you can refer to the paper. The conclusion of this study was that co-ingestion of carbohydrate and alpha-lactam protein attenuates their muscle pain, therefore elevates their sense of effort and enhance effective responses during 90 minutes of running. So this study was published in Physiology and Behavior. So another study is about the post-exercise. So because protein is more commonly applied in post-exercise recovery, actually the research gap is that no studies have compared the effect of alpha-lactam and whey protein co-ingestion with carbohydrate on short-term recovery. So the purpose of this study is to compare the effect of whey protein and alpha-lactam supplementation on post-exercise recovery following strenuous prolonged exercise. Okay, we have 2 treatments. One is the CA trial, carbohydrate and alpha-lactam and CW trial, carbohydrate plus whey protein. It's also a crossover counterbalance study design. So the exercise protocol was 90 minutes, 70% VO2 max running. However, this time we used the treatment after exercise during recovery. So different solutions was provided during the 2 hours recovery. However, we measured the 4 hours recovery as well as post 24 hours. We measured a blood sample, gas analysis, muscle soreness, effective response and treatments. So the important finding is that the sensitivity to muscle pain, in other words, pressure pain threshold, actually is higher in the CA trial than the CW trial, which means that alpha-lactam may be better than the whey protein to decrease the muscle pain. Another finding is that the salivary cortisol level. So we can see that after exercise, actually the salivary cortisol level increased in both groups. However, after 4 hours, so we can see that only CA group decreased. So which means that carbohydrate plus alpha-lactamine may be better for the recovery of salivary. Okay, so I will miss these 2 studies because only time effect for the measurement of lactate, glucose, IL-6, and CK level. So the conclusion of this study is that compared with co-ingestion of carbohydrate and whey protein isolates, co-ingestion of carbohydrate and alpha-lactamine reduced the sensitivity of the muscle pain, attenuated the feeling of fatigue, and was more beneficial to reduce cortisol responses. This paper was published in Frontiers in Physiology. So another study rationale is that we would like to extend the ingestion period before exercise. We also are very interested to know whether the ingestion of pre-exercise alpha-lactamine exercise performance. So the purpose of this study is to investigate the effects of pre-exercise ingestion of alpha-lactamine on substrate metabolism, muscle damage, effective response, and subsequent exercise performance. Okay, so this is the experimental protocol. So actually, so participants were required to consume some drinks 2 hours before exercise. So after 2 hours, participants were required to complete 21 kilometers running and test their exercise performance. So through this figure, you can see that their speeds were not disclosed to the participants when they were running. Okay, the design is also crossover counterbalance study design. We also used the 2 trials, CA trial and CW trial. CA means carbohydrate and alpha-lactamine, and the CW trial means carbohydrate and whey protein. Okay, actually, we found no difference in 21 km time trial performance between 2 groups. However, we found similar findings that CA group may be better for decrease their muscle pain. Also, they may be better in reduce their salivary cortisol level. Okay, so this study finding that the ingestion of alpha-lactamine did not improve the 21 km time trial performance. However, it may be benefit their, their pain threshold and reduce their feeling of fatigue and their cortisol level. So a brief summary of these 3 studies for during exercise. So we can see that for the energy metabolism, actually usually whey protein or alpha-lactamine is similar. However, for the muscle pain, alpha-lactamine better than the whey protein. For the effective responses, alpha-lactamine is better than the whey protein. Cortisol level, alpha-lactamine is less than the control. For the study 4, after exercise, we also found similar energy substrate metabolism. However, for the muscle pain or feeling of fatigue, alpha-lactamine may be better. Similar results also before exercise. No difference in performance and energy substrate metabolism. However, may be better for some effective responses, for example, feeling of fatigue. Okay, next I will introduce the 3rd area, cognitive function. So I will introduce 2 studies. They used the similar study design. I mean, 3 trials. One is a CES trial, means that participants provided carbohydrate electrolyte solution. CEPS trial, carbohydrate electrolyte protein solution, and a placebo trial, non-caloric artificially sweetened solution. Okay, for the 6th study, actually we would like to investigate the effect of carbohydrate protein solution on endurance performance. So I do not want to go to detail of previous literature. However, you can see that usually previous study found that CEPS solution may be equal to the CES solution for the time trial exercise performance. However, there are several limitations of these previous studies. One is that CEPS trial contains about more caloric than CES trial. Also, participants contains high rate of carbohydrates. Another one is about sex difference, because all these studies, you can see that only male athletes were recruited. Okay, we also would like to, we also were interested in the effect of CEPS on cognitive function, because protein supplementation has been suggested to be benefit their cognitive function under resting conditions. So the purpose of this study was to investigate whether CEPS solution would improve running performance and cognitive function compared with the CES solution and the PLS solution in female recreational marathon runners. So this is their protocol. So participants complete 21 km running on a treadmill. Okay, besides the fluid rotation, at different time points, we collect some urine sample, capillary blood sample, and some subjective measurements. Before and after the exercise, participants are also required to complete a cognitive function test. This is also a randomized double-blinded crossover study design. So this is the design of 3 treatments. Okay, so you can see that the CEPS solution, CES solution, and the placebo control. The difference is that the protein contents. Okay, CEPS solution has more protein contents. So cognitive function, we measure the verbal memory, visual memory, visual motor speed, reaction time, impulse control, and the cognitive efficiency index. Okay, so the major result is that CEPS solution actually may be benefit in than the placebo controls, placebo solution regarding their exercise performance. However, we found no difference in their exercise performance between CEPS solution and CES solution. However, for the cognitive function, we found that CEPS solution may be better than the placebo solution regarding their visual motor speed. Okay, so the key findings is that CES solution may improve their 21 km time trial performance. However, CEPS solution may be better for their visual motor speed. So this study was published in PLOS ONE. So it's open access journal, so you can check this journal. Okay, so another study is about the effect of different solutions consumed during a soccer-specific exercise protocol on cognitive function of male college soccer players. So in this study, we used laughter intermittent shuttle test, LIST, to simulate the soccer-specific exercise protocol. I hope that some of you have heard of this protocol. So literature review, I do not want to look into the detail, but you can see that actually CES solution maybe has some beneficial effects than the placebo regarding their performance. Okay, however, for the CEPS solution, may be better for some psychological performance, as I have introduced in my previous introduction. So, because co-ingestion of carbohydrate and protein may enhance specific cognitive functions during prolonged exercise, as I have suggested in several of our previous studies. However, cognitive function may be more important for team sports, such as soccer. So, because of limited studies, we would like to introduce whether investigate the effects of 3 different solutions, i.e. CES, CEPS, and placebo consumed during soccer-specific protocol on cognitive function of male college soccer players in Hong Kong. Okay, so this is this figure illustrates the list protocol. So actually, the participants completed 6 sessions of exercise. Each session is 15 minutes to simulate 90 minutes soccer competition. So in each session, actually, participants were required to complete walk sprints, active recovery, and running at different intensities. Okay, we use several different tests to including virtual search test, Stroop test, COSI block test, and the rapid visual information processing task to assess some different cognitive function domains. So because of time, I do not want to look into the detail of the results, but we can see clearly some difference among these 3 solutions regarding their cognitive functions. For example, this is about the response time in visual search test. Also accuracy of a visual search test. Response time in Stroop test, response time in RVIP test, as well as accuracy in rapid visual information processing test. So for example, in these results, we can see clearly that CES solution and CEPS solution is better in improving the accuracy of the RVIP test than the placebo trial. Okay, so the key findings of this study was that both CES and CEPS solution during list showed certain benefits to some domains of cognitive function, particularly sustained attention and vigilance. Also, their effects may be specific to their cognitive domain test. Some domains may be more preferred by the CEPS than the CES. Also, this study was published in Journal of Exercise and Fitness. Actually, we have also investigated the effect of different carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion.
Excuse me, Dr. Bob, you have 5 minutes more.
It's fine, it's almost the end of my presentation. We also complete several other studies to investigate the effects of carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion. For example, in these studies, one is about the during moderate intensity exercise and cognitive function. Another is about during a moderate intensity and post-exercise appetite. Okay, so I will not introduce these 2 studies today. Okay, I would like to thank you the invitation from Faculty of Sports Science, University of Negrin Semarang, for giving this opportunity to share with all of you several of our studies. As mentioned, that you can check the published paper for the detail. Of course, you are very welcome to contact me if you are interested with some of these studies or would like to have more discussion with me. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank my research partners, Professor Stephen Wang from Chinese University of Hong Kong, Professor Chen from Sun Yat-sen University in mainland China, Dr. Lu Qin from the Pennsylvania State University, Dr. Liang Li from China Institute of Sports Science, as well as Dr. Simon Cooper from Nottingham Trent University of UK. Okay, again, thank you everyone for your listening. So this is this is my email. Feel free to contact me if you are interested to know more about our research. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Thank you, Professor Bob Feng Hua Sun, for very comprehensive and detailed explanation about the macronutrients in exercise, possible benefit of carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion. Ladies and gentlemen, there was the third speaker of our third plenary sessions, and now it's time for us to raise question and answer. Here's I have several questions for all of the speakers. Maybe we're going to start from the first speakers. We do have question for Prof. Jun Ho Kang. However, because of he has some schedule, so he cannot attend, but he promised us that he will replay the questions via email. So we have question from Mr. Billy and Mrs. Juliana, which I will deliver to Prof. Jun Ho Kang email. Now we move on to Mr. Doni. Mr. Doni, we have several questions for you. First is from Mrs. Adiskarani. Mr. Doni, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Doni, regarding the slide mentions the effect on psychological view due to pandemic COVID-19, this phenomena need an athlete to become resilient. I want to ask about resilience and mental toughness. Which one of both are more important by athletes, or maybe both of them related to each other? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Adiska. Resilience and mental toughness are related. Most, if not mentally tough individuals are resilient, but not all resilient individuals are mentally tough. There is a difference, and although the two ideas are closely related, there are important difference. The difference lies in the positive components. So, resilience is positive and negative, but for the mental toughness is always positive. Yeah, we make useful thing that the two of item is different, but is the phrase survive and prosper. Resilience help you to survive, but not always, and mental toughness help you to prosper, but again not always. Resilience as a term is often discussed alongside the idea protective factors. So the resilience is just protective factors. It can be positive and negative, and also mental toughness, on the other hand, applies also to positive situation. So the question is, which one is the better? In the psychology, no one is better. Resilience is important too, and mental toughness is important too. Okay, I think it's the difference as which is the important answers. Thank you.
Okay, you are very welcome. Now we have the next questions, which is from Dr. Henny. Let me read the question for you. In responding to the condition of COVID-19 pandemic, the most important thing for athlete is to adapt with the situation. How a coach can help with this?
Okay, I think I already presentation in my papers.
About some tips, your last slide.
Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah. I remember that.
I think the strengthening the psychology component has significant impact on training and recovery condition. And the important thing for the pandemic is social interaction. So coach will always to be interacting with the athlete, because for the interaction every day, athletes have a motivated, because motivation is important for the athlete for this event, for this pandemic. And also self-awareness and self-efficacy. Athletes must, coach must know to say the athlete with the important thing of self-awareness. He know himself about the condition. Mental health management also important. Counseling with the athletes, communication, interaction, communication, and also family is a good positive impact. And I think the answer from the Miss Raya also about the communication of technology.
Oh, you already read the question from,
yeah.
Okay.
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 The answer is I said before that communication is important for the coach and athletes. So today with the social distancing, not coach and athlete will simply meet each other. So the Zoom meeting like this to to watch everyday activity of athlete is important to athlete get the motivation from the coach. I think it's my answer.
Okay, so even though we are in social distancing situation, which we cannot do exercise together, but we can maintain doing the exercise by themselves at home, but still connected via Zoom application, kind of thing like that. Okay, cool. Cool. Thank you very much, Mr. Doni. I think there is one more question. This is for Mr. Doni. Wait, it's rolling now in the question chat. I'm Muniroh. If the situation and condition do not allow us to avoid the risk of COVID-19 transmission, okay. For example, case in soldiers on the battlefield, especially soldiers who stay together, can the risk of COVID-19 transmission be prevented only by strengthening immunity, such as by getting vaccination, intake of multivitamin, and high micronutrition? Oh, this one is, I believe it goes to Prof. Bob Feng Hua Sun, right?
Yeah.
This question. Okay, now, thank you, Mr. Doni, for answering the question. Now we move on to the second presenter, which is Dr. Bob. It's finally, I see you online. It's very nice to see your presentation, very insightful. Maybe we start with this question, Dr. Bob, from Muniro. If the situation and condition do not allow us to avoid the risk of COVID, can strengthening immunity, such as by getting vaccination, intake of multivitamin and high micronutrients, and having regular exercise help?
So can you repeat your questions again? Because I cannot hear it very clearly.
Okay, I will copy and paste it in the chat and then share it. Hold on, because this is the new one. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let me share the screen. Share. Okay. So maybe the top one. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. The first question first.
Okay.
Okay.
So it seems that the question is about how to make their health under pandemic of COVID-19 regarding their micronutrients. So actually, I'm not the expert because I did not investigate their nutrition requirement in the during the pandemic. But basically, so the for macronutrients is important for how to say all the time, especially you do not have very good immune function system. So for the immune system function, basically, the protein will be very important because they will be helpful to improve the immune system function. So regarding the amount of the carbohydrates and or protein amounts, so depending on the exercise training. So even if you do not have regular exercise training during the pandemic, you still need to consume a large amount of the protein to improve the immune system function. However, I think that you should pay more attention to the quality of the protein rather than quantity of the protein. Because we all know that for macronutrients, especially carbohydrate, fat, and protein, a large amount of consumption will improve or increase the energy intake, will cause another problem, i.e. the increase of the body weight. So this will be an adverse effect. So my suggestion will be that focus more on the quality of the protein rather than quantity of the protein during the pandemic. Definitely, they are important for us, especially if you are maintain the exercise training. So they will be more important. Okay, so I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, thank you very much. And then we still have several more questions. Let me share the screen again.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So still with Mr. Bob. From Mr. Mursid. So right now, Mr. Bob, it is Ramadan here and we all are fasting and athletes are fasting. We fasting for about 14 hours from around 4:30 a.m. to 6 in the evening. And Mr. Mursid asked a question regarding to macronutrients need for athlete in normal condition versus fasting condition in which we don't eat, we don't drink for 14 hours. Is it effect on nutrients metabolism, especially carbohydrate and protein congestion when athletes do fasting?
Okay, so thanks for the question. Actually, for the normal condition, so I think that I have introduced a lot in my presentation for athletes when they do exercise. For the fasting situation, especially for the long-term fasting situation, similarly, I think I cannot give very good suggestion because I did not investigate such kind of research. It's not my research area. However, I would like to suggest you read some papers from Professor Ranmo. He has published several studies about the nutrition supplements or nutrition requirement in their long-term fasting status. So I'm sorry that I could not answer your second question because I did not familiar with this part.
Okay, no problems, no problem. Mr. Mursid, please read the paper that Dr. Bob suggested to you. Maybe Dr. Bob, would you please write down the name of the professor who write most of their papers on the fasting?
Okay, no problem.
Yes. Thank you. And then the next question is from Mr. Yanes T. I'd like to ask question regarding rehydration using carbohydrate and whey protein isolate. You have explained before in the study result. How about rehydration recommendation for weight sport athlete? Is it still the same or there should be other recommendation?
Okay, so thank you for your question. I think for the weight sports athletes, there will be a little bit difference because for their maintaining their body weight is one important criteria for weight sports. So otherwise, you may have no opportunity to join their competition. So depending on your body weight status. So if your body weight is normal or under the normal range of your category, I think it should be the same. However, so if you are a little bit overweight, so you must lose body weight. So the recommendation will be a little bit different because you must control the total energy intake. Okay, so which means that the amount of the carbohydrates and the protein should be less than their general recommendations. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then the next questions still for Mr. Bob's. Hold on. It's my question regarding to some suggested formula in some of your studies. Will that work best for power athlete or endurance athlete? Should regular people consume the similar fluid co-ingestion or not?
Actually, most of my studies focused on the endurance athletes because it's more demanding, for the athletes regarding the rehydration or regarding some physiological and psychological responses. For the power sports, actually, it will be a little bit different. So I think that co-ingestion of carbohydrate and protein will definitely benefit them regarding the recovery of their muscular strength or muscular fatigue. Also, for the cognitive function, actually, we are currently doing one study. It's about the co-ingestion of carbohydrate and protein co-ingestion in HIIT, which means high intensity interval training. So it will be similar for some power athletes. So because the results has not come, so I cannot share with you. But for some very initial analysis, we found that co-ingestion of carbohydrate protein has some beneficial effect for the cognitive function and substrate metabolism. So I think that if you are interested, I will keep you updated for the progress of this study.
Okay, sure. I will be very interested to see the result of your further study. We still have some question for you. I think a lot of people are interested to ask.
It's okay. I'm pleasure.
Okay. And then it's still in the chat forum.
Yeah.
But I already copied here. Excellent presentation, Dr. Bob. In your research regarding about cognitive, how to measure cognitive, how to connect with physical activity.
Okay, so thank you for your question. Actually, in my research, I used some computer cognitive function test software to test. The reason is that it's more sensitive to detect the difference between the, regarding the performance of different cognitive function domains. Of course, you can use some questionnaire, but I think that because the questionnaire is not so sensitive, you may need a large sample size, which may be more appropriate if you would like to, do some physical activity related research. Also, I think that studies connecting the physical activity, cognitive function is also important. Actually, recently, many studies have suggested that physical activity may be positive correlated with the cognitive function of primary and secondary school students, even for their academic performance. However, I think that the study focus on physical activity and cognitive function has a lot now. But if you would like to include both physical activity, nutrition, and cognitive function, the related study are still very limited. I think it's a good potential research direction.
All right, very interesting. And then the next questions is from Irana Mary. And she asks, okay, so she is undergraduate student and she wants to get deeper understanding as an athlete. What kind of nutrition is right for athletes' competition preparation, especially during the pandemic when the athletes have little time to prepare for the competition?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. Actually, it's a very good question. Actually, depending on the, as what I mentioned, I did not do some research specifically related to the pandemic. However, I think the general recommendation should be similar. So if you would like to prepare for some competition, the most important parts, the first thing will be improve the carbohydrate storage, especially the glycogen storage, because usually in the different kinds of sports competitions, the muscle glycogen storage will be one important factor to determine their performance. Okay, so you should consume a relatively large amounts of carbohydrates before the competition which may be better for the exercise performance. For the protein parts, it's depending on the how to say, actually depending on the your body status. If you have regular training or if you have normal body status, actually it may not necessarily to pay specific attention to the protein. But basic rule, I think, is that you should increase enough amount of the high quality protein, which will make sure that you have enough protein intake. Okay. However, if you have several, if you have only limited time to do the preparation for the competition, also I think that the general nutrition guideline should be that you should consume some high quality and that high quality macronutrients that should be easily digested and absorbed. Okay. Also, it's maybe depend on the exercise or sports type, because for different kinds of sports, the nutrition requirement may be a little bit different. So what I have introduced is just some very basic recommendations. So if you have any further questions about this part, you may contact me for some further detailed introduction.
Very nice, Dr. Bob. You always open to any questions and let them to contact you via email. So don't be shocked if after this you're going to get a bombs of emails from Indonesia.
It's okay. It's okay. Very welcome.
All right. So Dr. Bob, from your presentation on macronutrients in exercise, what is the best combination of what's considerations that could make the best compositions of combination between protein and carbohydrate? What should we pay attention on?
Okay, thank you for the question. So actually, I think that it is hard to make a general recommendation for different kinds of situations. For example, if your target is to improve the exercise performance, actually, from the most of previous studies, including our studies, so co-ingestion of carbohydrate and protein may not provide additional benefits compared with traditional carbohydrate electrolyte solution. However, co-ingestion of carbohydrate protein ingestion may be better for some psychological functions, for example, the cognitive function or rehydration, so on and so forth. So for the rehydration part, definitely, like I have introduced in my study, I think a relatively large amount of protein is preferred. For the other part, for example, the muscle glycogen synthesis, or maybe for the cognitive function, currently, because of the limited study, I think we cannot give a general recommendation at this moment. Okay, I think that depending on your requirement or your interest, there should be a little bit difference regarding the combination of the carbohydrate and protein. Sometimes even maybe carbohydrate is better than carbohydrate and protein. So depending on the situation.
Okay, very clear now that we cannot create a specific formula, but it's all is depend on our needs and our purpose, our aims, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's why there is a sport nutritionist to consult with, right?
No problem.
And we cannot make it by our own. Right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, it's very nice discussion, but as the time already show, it's almost 11:30, so I have to end these sessions of the third plenary session. Before that, I would like to read some conclusions from Prof. Jun Ho Kang. He mentioned that sport market value network is a value connected network generated by sport-derived products. Each sport has its own institution and culture, deriving various forms of products, so-called sport-derived product program. Each sport-derived product has its own market, and a collection of this market forming a sport market. Conclusion from Professor Doni Wirayuda. He mentioned several tips to maintain the psychological athletes during this pandemic. And the most important things is communication, strengthening communication and give the athlete motivation and encouragement. Also, self-awareness for athlete, which is understanding themselves and their needs, is a very important psychological factor for athletes. Use communication technology. Make sure that you are not alone and you stay motivated within your environments. And conclusion from Dr. Bob's, it's really depend on what you need and what your purpose in deciding what macronutrients that you need. So I think that's all for today presentations. Thank you very much for the Excellency Professor Jun Ho Kang, Professor Doni Wirayuda, and Professor Bob Feng Hua Sun for the very informative talks. May the lectures today enlighten us and make us to be a better professional sport teachers, lecturer, and sport practitioners. Thank you for your attention. See you in different occasion. I will give back the screen to Mr. Billy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for Assistant Professor Fatona Suraya, SPD, MA, MPD. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue our agenda, we would like to give announcement regarding link for attendance. Please check the link for attendance on your screen or your chat room. Once again, please check the link for attendance on your screen or on your chat room. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the end of our main program, and we will continue to the parallel session. Before that, we would like to announce regarding the parallel session. First, the parallel session will begin at 12:30 p.m. Please log into the link according to your own parallel room. Once again, the parallel session will begin at 12:30 p.m. and please log in to the link according to your own parallel room. Now, I would leave you with a quote by Stewart Brown, an author and innovative thinker who once said, "We can see the past, but not influence it. We can influence the future, but not see it." Let us all be guided by all the things we have learned and heard throughout this conference and be able to see and influence our future. Thank you very much for guests, speakers, and participants to attend this webinar. Till we meet again, perhaps in the next conference. Keep safe, keep healthy, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Thank you, Mr. Doni. Thank you, everyone.